Welcome to the second session of Reimagining Retirement, Exploring Your Life Plan. My name is Roger Baldwin. I'm an emeritus professor at Michigan State University and the current president of the AROHE Board of Directors. At AROHE, we support all phases of faculty and staff retirement, and we know that higher education retirees are assets of society who reinvent, not retire from life, who positively impact their communities, and who contribute to the greater good. In our first session, Dr. Michelle Silver explored the phenomenon that occurs when one's work and personal identity are deeply intertwined, and she discussed strategies for living your best life in retirement. Today, Dr. Stacey Gordon will help us identify our values and goals. I hope that you will find this session to be a valuable experience in clarifying your own life plans. Before we get started, I'd like to thank and recognize Carrie Sweeney, the director of the UC Berkeley Retirement Center, and also an AROHE board member. I want to thank her for her vision in developing this program and her dedicated work in bringing it to fruition. We're very grateful to you, Carrie. Today, Carrie will be relaying questions to our speaker at the end of the presentation. So please put your questions in the Q&A on your screen. Participants will stay muted, and we do not have a chat function today. Now I'm pleased to introduce Sasha Heathman, a Fidelity Workplace financial consultant. Ms. Heathman promotes financial wellness for plan participants through one-on-one planning and educational events like this event today. She holds a bachelor's degree in human development from the University of Texas in Austin and a master's degree in business administration from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Welcome, Sasha.
Thank you so much, Roger. And it is a pleasure to be here again today, representing Fidelity Investments and the collaboration with AROHE. Now, you may be wondering why Fidelity is interested in a learning series exploring the social, psychological, and emotional aspects of retirement, or reinventing yourself, as Roger mentioned. And the reality is that the decision to retire is both a head and a heart decision. And it's through the assessment of both the quantitative and the qualitative aspects that help really make your retirement vision a reality. My role as a Fidelity Workplace financial consultant provides me with the pleasure every day to meet with people to help them create a plan to successfully prepare and transition into retirement. And it's through my conversations, specifically those in higher ed, that I found that retirement is sometimes less of a financial decision and more about what's next. What's next for someone who has dedicated their entire career to advancing the mission of the university, connecting with and mentoring students and colleagues, and engaging in rewarding research. Now, if you do have questions about the financial side of retirement, or you would like a second opinion, please watch for a follow-up email directly from AROHE. There will be direction on how to connect with me or one of my colleagues to meet one-on-one to review your specific goals and talk about your next chapter. Additionally, there will be some self-service tools and resources for you to explore. So now for our main event, I would love to welcome Dr. Stacey Gordon here to the virtual stage with me. Dr. Gordon is the program director of Next Phase Adult Caregiving and Retirement for the Work-Life Office at New York University. In her role, Dr. Gordon relies upon her expertise in social work and gerontology to provide university-wide programming, thought leadership, and personalized consultations with faculty and administrators on adult caregiving, aging, and retirement planning. Dr. Gordon also developed and now directs the NYU Society of Retired Faculty. Dr. Gordon will help us explore next phase opportunities, define goals, and make a plan through a values-driven lens. Please help me welcome Dr. Stacey Gordon.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you to Fidelity and to AROHE and to my team at NYU WorkLife, who have all helped me develop and proceed at this moment with this presentation. So I'm very appreciative for the opportunity. And I want to mention also that it was with support from AROHE, direct support from Sue Barnes as a consultant, that NYU developed the brand new Society of Retired Faculty. It's only a couple of years old. So now, when you think about retirement and immediately start to feel anxious, or when you think about retirement and wonder how you will ever get there, there's a solution for that. And I'm really glad that you're here today. So this presentation is going to invite you to think about what your retirement and older age can look like. There are as many ways to retire as there are human beings. So you will clearly write your own plan, as unique as you are. So think of the image that you have about retirement. Take a second. If the image that you have of retirement is of you waiting around for people to come and visit, waiting around for other people to make decisions for you, waiting for the times 1 or 2 times per year when you see family, I'm here to tell you that these images might damage your health. To the contrary, if the image that you see is someone engaging in physical and mind-expanding, energizing activities with people you enjoy, spending time doing activities like playing bridge or mahjong, walking, running, eating delicious, healthy food, these images might very well keep you healthy and happy. I want to be honest with you. That first scenario may be easier for some of you. So it may very well happen and you can make the best of it. But from now until then, there's good reason, and I'm going to tell you why and show you how you should change your thinking. So before we delve into my presentation more deeply, I'm going to share some facts that might help clarify a few questions about aging. The first, we can keep growing, learning, and mastering new skills throughout our lives. As we age, our brains continue to make new neurons and build new pathways, helping us learn and remember more effectively. 2, generally, older people tend to prioritize positive information and emotions over negative information and emotions. This might lead you to feel a little more mellow as you age. The third, older people have the ability to rebound from negative feelings more quickly than younger people. And most often, older people don't get stuck in those negative thoughts and feelings as they may have done when they were younger. The fourth, while older adults might be reluctant or unable to spend energy on learning irrelevant information, they are fully capable of concentrating their attention and effort on understanding what's meaningful and true to them. And finally, even though we know that getting older means eventually becoming physically weaker, research shows that our health span and productivity and our lifespan have been improving for over 100 years. So if anyone is interested in learning more about these facts in literature on aging, I'll send you a follow-up email after the presentation. So building on the good news. This is a presentation that's going to invite you to think about what your older age and retirement can look like. There are so many ways to retire, as I said earlier. The literature I'm drawing from about aging and retirement is clear. Those who prepare for retirement in advance say that they are happier and more fulfilled in their lives. Our sense of self is often intertwined with the work that we do. And by framing retirement as an intentional next phase in your life cycle, you can determine what values you want to uphold, what connections you want to make or strengthen, and how you want to contribute to society. In other words, you can build a retirement identity that feels meaningful and energizing and relevant in ways that are important to you. As you know, retirement, just as your career, is not a one-size-fits-all sort of time. There are a myriad of options waiting for you, whether it's traveling to places you've always wanted to visit, moving back into a paid position, becoming a docent at a museum or an usher at a theater, finding brand new hobbies, writing the book you've been thinking about for years, or consulting with your former PhD students and confirming that your skills and knowledge are still useful. It's important to think outside the box. So now I'm going to introduce you to 3 people, all of whom have retired in the past few years. They represent 3 completely different models of retirement. And you may know someone like 1, 2, or all 3 of these people. The first is Phil. Phil came to America from Germany in 1920. Academically gifted, he earned his JD and then clerked for a Supreme Court judge. He then earned his PhD in law from Columbia University and was invited to join the faculty at the University of Chicago. During his tenure there, he developed legal theory that remains core to our legal system until today. Phil received the highest accolades in his field. He loved his work and his work loved him. Phil never planned to retire, but when he was 87 years old, Phil decided to stop work and spent a very unhappy year floundering. Phil didn't know who he was unless he was working. He stopped working and he died a year later. And then there's Alan. In contrast, Alan started his career in 1962 at IBM as a psychologist. IBM sent him to graduate school where he got his PhD. Alan returned to New York as a company man and worked for IBM for the next 25 years. He took the early retirement offer and was recruited by his alma mater, City College, where he taught for another 20 years and formally retired at age 81. Today, at age 91, Alan remains physically active, opting to hike on flatter trails rather than rambles up and down mountains. And he enjoys time with his 9 grandchildren, planning and taking trips with them and with his friends. And he is now acting as a promotions agent for his 86-year-old wife, whose 2nd novel was recently published. In contrast again, there's Lee, who after 25 years of teaching 1st grade in a local public school, Lee became an administrator for a small community college, until she decided after 10 years, at age 70 or so, enough with paid work. And today she's 88 and wakes up at 6 a.m. to play tennis, work out with a trainer, or go to a group exercise class. Lee organizes a book club and bridge tournaments, takes courses at a local lifelong learning center, and volunteers at a local thrift store. She cares for her husband and many grandchildren and takes excellent care of herself. Like Phil, Alan, and Lee, for many academics and university administrators, work is central to your identity. And it can be hard to think about retiring because retirement means leaving many parts of the life you've so skillfully crafted behind. And if you haven't thought about what's next, you may indeed face a crisis. And this brings us to Erik Erikson, who introduced the term identity crisis in his theory of human development. Erikson's identity crisis originally related to teenage development. As we all know, teenagehood is a time when many human beings experience their first identity crisis. But scholars have described retirement as mirroring adolescence, in some ways beginning with an identity crisis from that initial time of awkwardness, even thinking about how to make the decision to retire, through the trying out new identity phases, and potentially some uncertainty and confusion about one's sense of self during this time. Retirement can prompt people to reevaluate their identities and purpose, to become introspective and affirm or reevaluate one's values, and to affirm or reevaluate one's contributions to society and personal fulfillment. As retirees navigate this transition, they may grapple with questions such as, who am I now? What is my purpose and path and relevance without work to occupy me during the day? Just as in adolescence, human beings develop at their own pace in their own particular way, same as retirement, when there are so many different paths to take, identities to try on. Above all, we know that the key ingredient to a satisfying retirement is planning. So I want to move into how to make a plan that works for you. How to imagine or reimagine your own personalized plan for retirement. So we'll begin with where you are now. Some of you are just contemplating retirement. Some of you are in the process of retiring, and others may have already retired, like our three friends, and maybe thinking about what else there is in this phase of life. So jumping back to our friend Erik Erikson, who in 1950 developed the 8-stage chart of the life cycle that appeared in his classic book, Childhood and Society. In this model, Erikson documented the stages of psychosocial development, which he described as spiraling progressions of individual growth. The sequence of these stages is based on the resolution of a particular psychosocial crisis that requires achieving a balance between the needs of the individual, psycho, and the expectations of society, social. With the successful resolution of each of the psychosocial crises comes the acquisition of a basic virtue, which is an attribute, a characteristic of strength and character that can be used to help in resolving the subsequent crises throughout life. So the stage that the majority of people who are retiring, is the 7th one, generativity versus stagnation. Gerontologists applying Erikson's theory describe this stage as an opportunity to focus on generating one's legacy. We know that a legacy is a way to define one's life contributions in a way that outlasts oneself. Giving back to others and to the next generation to make your enduring mark on your family, with friends, in your community, and perhaps in the world. I want to acknowledge that some of you, perhaps many of you, have already made a mark on the world. Undoubtedly, there are scholars among us here who have contributed so significantly to their field that a discovery or two is named after them. Many of you have developed theories, published books, and have a record number of published papers, and have influenced hundreds or thousands of students through teaching and mentoring and shaping their careers and contributions to society. I want to say that this is indeed an honorable legacy. And now is the time, though, to figure out how to either bring your current work into your next phase of life or to establish your legacy anew. And the truth is that from now until 2030, 12,000 people in the US turn 65 every day. As the proportion of adults aged 65 and older in the US increases, the capacity of the over 65 population represents our country's most significant increasing natural resource. You, the baby boomers, have historically unprecedented skills, resources, and education. Imagine if every one of you today got to create a legacy that you design, what a mark you could collectively make on the world. So now is the time for you to think about what you see yourself doing to define the values guiding you and to begin in earnest to create a plan to get there. Here are a few important questions for you to ask yourself to guide yourself into this next phase. And I want you to feel free to take a picture of these questions so that you can go back to them later. We'll also send them to you. But I encourage you to think about answering these questions because they're very important to you to help you shape your next phase. So throughout your life thus far, what values have guided you? What issues are important to you? Who are the people who are important to you? And what makes you happy? So tools to help you begin to think about answering these questions are found in the theory of productive aging. The theory of productive aging was initially established in 1983 or so by luminary gerontologist Robert Butler, and expanded upon more recently by many research teams, one of which I want to acknowledge, the research teams of Dr. Ernest Gonzalez at New York University and Dr. Nancy Morrow Howell at Washington University in St. Louis. This research is aimed at developing a positive image of older age where engagement is the norm, and recognizes that as people are living longer and healthier lives, most of us prefer to be engaged in and contributing to society. So productive aging opportunities may involve rejoining the paid workforce, perhaps as an adjunct professor, teaching 1 or 2 classes a year, or maybe even developing your own business or not-for-profit. What might be the biggest surprise to you about starting a business, it was for me, is that a recent report described that Americans in the 55 to 64-year-old age group and higher start businesses new businesses at a higher rate than those in their 20s and 30s. So volunteering from a productive aging framework could also involve institutional volunteering through a senior core program or at a community center, or it could just be dropping by your grandchild's school once a month to read to the children. I want to go back to our friend Lee, who has been an active volunteer since retirement. Lee volunteers at a local thrift shop that donates profits to a charitable organization. She serves meals on holidays at a local soup kitchen and organizes a monthly book club for her friends. And back to caregiving, the third area of productive aging. Caregiving involves caring for one's friends or family members, grandchildren, adult children, siblings, or maybe a spouse. So research clearly points to engagement in paid work, volunteer work, or caregiving as conferring health and functional benefits. And studies as far back as 1955 by NIH demonstrate that older people who have goals and structures, such as we find in productive aging, are more likely to live longer and healthier lives. Physical and cognitive activity, along with positive social engagement and supportive social networks, are related to improved health and functioning with aging. I will make that point again and again in this lecture. So back to Alan. Our friend Alan is someone who in his first phase of retirement moved from international paid consulting in his field, which he found through a contact with a former doctoral student he'd mentored. And in his next stage, he and his wife and friends began to volunteer for a local refugee agency near their home. They sponsored a new refugee family, and Alan was tapped to join the job search committee. He took pride in helping the adults in the refugee family find good paying jobs and has counseled the family on employment issues ever since. Currently, Alan finds the greatest satisfaction spending time with family and friends, whether traveling together or just getting together for holidays and meals. So here are a few additional questions to consider based on the theory of productive aging that will stimulate thinking about how your ideas on retirement may have changed over time, and if so, how. Again, feel free to take a photo of these questions and answer them on your own at home. And again, we will follow up with you and send these questions. So the first, when you entered the professional workforce, what was your goal about when you'd retire and what you would do in retirement? And how might your goals have changed after a long career? 2, are there individual projects or activities that you're thinking of starting in retirement? And if so, what are they? 3, are you considering doing volunteer work? If so, with what population? In what location? And what skills and experience can help you find and build a meaningful volunteer position? 4, do you anticipate caregiving responsibilities? And if so, for whom? And finally, do you have any new business or nonprofit ideas you'd like to explore? So one very effective way to think about creating new generative connections using your own values as a guide is to think about your social capital. So what is social capital? Well, colloquially, social capital is like the glue that holds society together. It's about the relationships and the connections between people that help us get along and work together. It includes things like trust, help, information sharing within a community and outside of your community. And basically, it's about how friends, neighbors, and groups support each other and make a community stronger. Academically, social capital is defined as social ties, information, obligations, expectations, and the social norms of a group of people that enable an individual to act. Social capital can inform a satisfying life, and a satisfying life at all ages is built upon many pillars. So think about what the elements are that you may consider to be a good and satisfying life in retirement. These will vary widely depending on your own personal preferences, on your life experiences, and on your circumstances. However, several key factors are commonly recognized as important for supporting a good quality of life in retirement. These factors may include health and physical well-being, I want to acknowledge the variations among human bodies and the determinants of health. So here I want to stress maintaining your best physical health, your best physical body as well as you can. Also, supporting a good quality of life includes mental and emotional well-being, financial security, independence and autonomy, comfortable and safe living environment, spiritual or religious fulfillment, access to transportation, and respect, recognition, and relevancy. I know that this is a very tall order, and I want to acknowledge that you will likely strike a balance between and among these elements. I want to emphasize what Robert Waldinger wrote about in his popular 2023 book called The Good Life. And this book was based on his research through the Harvard study of adult development. Waldinger emphasizes the importance of these three lessons. First, having social connections is good for our health and well-being. And conversely, loneliness is dangerous. Second, having higher quality close connections is more important for our well-being than the number of connections. So one friend, two friends, one relative, one person that you can count on as a close connection is very important. And third, having good relationships is not only good for our bodies, but also good for our brains. So through your career and your lifetime, you've likely formed hundreds, if not thousands, of relationships and connections with students and colleagues, mentors and mentees, friends and family. Now is the time to ask yourself, who will be in your retirement network? It is your social capital that will help you determine this. So let's look at the different types of social capital. The network of people in your life who can support you through the most challenging periods and provide the foundation for an enriching and engaging and relevant next stage of life. So these three types of social capital include social bonding. Social bonds are the connections with those with whom you share many characteristics, such as age, political affiliations, hobbies, career networks, family, and so on. Social bonds are often the strongest relationships you have in your life. These are the people you rely upon in a crisis. and you can take steps to continually build on your existing bonds. The next type of social capital is social bridging. So social bridges can be thought of looser connections within your socio-cultural group. Consider your ties with friends of friends, individuals with whom you've shared some sort of meaningful experience, and or someone with whom you'd like to develop a closer relationship. These connections are thought of as horizontal, since they're bridges between people of the same sociocultural level. And the third type of social capital that I'll talk about is linking social capital. Social linkages are connections with individuals who are demographically different from you in a meaningful way. For example, religiously, racially, ethnically, culturally, or socioeconomically. Ties between socially diverse groups can be thought of as your vertical connections and can expand and diversify your social network and resources. There is a lot of evidence that people who use social bonds or bridges, connections and linkages, connections of family and friends as resources, learn about employment opportunities. However, your family and friends might not always know about employment opportunities. So it's very important to consider those social linkages. So I've mentioned the topic or the term relevance quite a bit already. I want to expand upon that a bit more. I know that this is an issue. Remaining relevant can be an issue for many people in retirement. And so I'm going to shine a light on this topic and give you some tips about how to think about remaining relevant in your own life. But first, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to be relevant? I think this is a question for each of us to answer because it means different things to all of us. But I hope you can benefit from this framework that I've developed as a source of support to think about your ongoing relevance. So here are some ideas about how you can develop relevance and continue to feel like you are remaining relevant in your life. The first is curiosity. Be curious about yourself. Be curious about what makes you tick. What's important to you? Be curious about the world, about friends, family, about people of all ages. That might mean getting on TikTok. That might mean learning about Instagram. It might mean going somewhere that's new and unfamiliar and maybe a bit uncomfortable for you because you're curious about what's going on there. The second idea is to remain a student. Remain a student about life. Learn new things. Find something you're passionate about, learn about it, and talk about it. Share what you're learning with others. So the fourth thing is make the switch from institutionally defined relevance to self-relevance. I want to share a story with you about a woman named Shayna, who was a participant in one of our NYU groups for pre-retirement faculty. So the group is called the TARTS, and TARTS actually means talking about retirement transitions, seriously. And I think a few TARTS are on this webinar. So I want to acknowledge you, say thank you for coming. And so in this group, we have a participant named Shayna. And Shayna came to a meeting about a month before her retirement date. She was terribly upset and terribly concerned about her personal relevance, about remaining relevant in her field. We probed a bit further to support her concerns, and when we probed deeply, she revealed that she had just won a Lifetime Achievement Award in her field. And she had just earned a grant to continue her research and consulting for the next 2 years. These achievements, she realized, won't go away, would not go away overnight. But what was going on with Shayna was that she was making the transition from institutional relevance at NYU to personal relevance on her own. She was on her own, and that transition from the university to home, to next phase, whatever that might be, can be complicated. Which brings me to my next piece of advice, which is to choose involvement. Make a choice, become involved in something before you retire. Start to consult, start volunteer work, build an identity outside of your institution. And if you've already retired, this still is relevant for you because you can start now. The next piece of advice is to experiment. Experiment with doing new things, changing your routine, change your taste in food, change your taste in clothing, wear purple, use your voice and speak your mind if you're not used to doing that. And the next piece of advice is to try your best to stay abreast of technology. Is there a tech device that you think you'd like to learn? There are classes for that. And with AI, technology is getting much easier to learn, not harder. I want to just shout out that AARP has a collaboration with an organization called Senior Planet. That's a national organization. They have branches all over the US where they teach virtually and in person all sorts of new tech platforms. So try to access the Senior Planet site, either online or in person. And finally, change your expectations and change your plans for how to be relevant. If you thought you can only be relevant in your current workplace, change your mind. Personal relevance is accessible. It's at your own fingertips. So for Alan, remaining relevant post-retirement was similar to before retirement. He described relating to the real world around himself. He described contributing to groups and feeling worthwhile and finding meaning in life, and being someone that others in his network look up to. So remaining relevant for Alan meant building on his own experiences and bringing them into his new life outside of the university. For Lee, remaining relevant today is making sure that she gets to the library to take out the books she's read about in the New York Times book review. She pours through each of the books and makes a list of those that would be appropriate for her monthly book club that she runs. She then presents the books to her committee, and they decide which book to send out to the book club. She also makes sure to be the first to register for the classes that she wants to take at the local Lifelong Learning Institute, and works out with her trainer 3 days a week to give her energy. So I want you to think about how you can define relevance in your life using the pointers that I've just presented to you as a guide. And again, I'll follow up and send all of these to you. So now that you know that you can plan your retirement, I want to talk about something that affects us all and can be very dangerous. And that is ageism. When Shayna rushed into our meeting with so much anxiety, and we asked her what was going on, she was full of self-doubt. She felt that as she grew older and as she left her workplace, she was losing relevancy, and that was partially due to ageism. She questioned herself so completely that she forgot herself. And I think that there was ageism involved. So ageism is so pervasive, you don't even recognize it when it's happening. But you must know how it can limit opportunity and cause harm, and how important it is to fight ageism. So I want to describe a few different types of ageism and where you'll likely experience it. And I want to say that we all have implicit ageism inside of us. That is the negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we have towards older people. We internalize those negative thoughts and feelings and express behaviors that are negative about older people. We act on those thoughts. And how do we do that? We doubt ourselves. We doubt other older people. How do we do that? We send out messages to people. For example, birthday cards. How many of you have opened a birthday card that says, oh, you're 65, you're over the hill, there's nothing left to live for, but hey, happy birthday. Or we engage in negative self-talk about our physical attributes, about wrinkles, about gray hair, about senior moments that happen to everyone. Everyone forgets, regardless of age. We also experience ageism within our families. So this happens when family members might, with all good intentions, doubt that you can do something while you know that you can. They might doubt that you can learn new skills, let's say, on the computer. They might doubt that you should continue to live where you want to live. And they might encourage choices that you've already expressed that you're not interested in. And these doubts can cause stress. And internalization of this stress can cause negative physical outcomes, like slower walking speed, slower recovery from illness, poor cardiovascular health, poor cognition, among many. It's really important for you to think about how to confront ageism in your own life. So I want to shout out, I want to point to this book, Breaking the Age Code by Professor Becca Levy from the Yale School of Public Health and the School of Psychology. In this book, Becca outlines plans for you to think about how to confront your own internalized age stereotypes. Becca and I worked together to develop an intervention at NYU that we've given at NYU called the Wrinkle Salon, which is a group that we run to help people develop ways of thinking differently about how they're growing older. You'll see the Wrinkle Salon mentioned in Becca's book, and I really want to encourage you to think about how you can develop new aging attitudes. This is one among the many books that I want to point out to you that I'll also send in that follow-up email. So in conclusion, I want to talk about one more piece of planning for retirement. That's very important. I want to discuss ideas for what you do or how you can plan for what you want to do immediately upon retirement. Many people report to me that they wake up the day after retirement thinking, oh boy, what did I do? I have no plan for today. I don't even know what time it is when I woke up. I don't know what I'm going to eat. I don't know where I'm going to go. So what I want you to do to wake up in the morning as a retired person with a plan, right? You have all of this freedom, but the plan needs to be laid out for you. You need to create a plan for the first day, for the first week, for the first month, and for the first year. And follow that plan. You can vary slightly if you'd like, but follow that plan because that will help guide you to feeling good, to feeling positive, to feeling excited, full of energy and relief. And sometimes acknowledge that you can also feel lonely and bewildered as you move on with retirement. All of those are normal, expected, and healthy. So I want to conclude with the acknowledgement that planning is key. You can remain relevant. You can fight ageism, and you can create a next phase full of meaning and purpose in your retirement. So thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. And now I'd like to hear from you during the Q&A.
Thanks, Stacey. We're going to go to questions now. We've got some, and we encourage everyone to join in your questions and put them in the Q&A. We intentionally have the chat turned off so that all questions will easily go for 700 people to the Q&A. How important is it to have these social connections, social network be people who are locally available?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, if you use technology like Zoom, you're clearly using Zoom. You can have people who are closely connected to you all over the world. I do think that having someone that you feel close to nearby is always good as a source of support, but having people all over the world, one or two people that you can rely on, that you can travel with, that you can talk to on a regular basis, that's great. So both locally and nationally or internationally are wonderful.
Great. Let's see. You spoke of social bonding and then two kinds of other social capital. What were the names of those again?
So social linking, right? Linking social capital. Social linkages are connections with people who are demographically different from you in a meaningful way, such as different religion, race, ethnicity, culture, or socioeconomic status. And the other is social bonding. Social bonds are the connections with those whom you share many characteristics. And social bridges, just to repeat, are those that are looser connections. They're sort of friends of friends, people you might meet at a party but don't socialize with a lot. But those are people that you may have shared some sort of meaningful experience with that you can expand upon.
Great. And so what's the significance with having those differences? I know I read somewhere that, for example, if your closest connection is with your aunt or your mother, they may be or your sister, your brother, they may have a different input to giving you feedback than say someone that's not a familiar bond or your chosen family. Just to be able to give you that insight. Is that relevant in what you're saying here?
Sure. We got different things from all sorts of people, right? We had all of our different connections can sort of contribute to a rich experience in life. So yeah, varying those social connections is really important. But the reason that I brought up the social capital piece is because I was thinking, and I am thinking for you, that it's very important for you to think about who the people you have in your network, whether close to you, close into you, horizontally or vertically, that can help you think of ways to create a retirement identity and plan, right? Let's say social linkages, the vertical connections are those that you might find some sort of volunteer opportunity or job opportunity or new friendship that you would never even have thought of had you not sort of thought about the different type of people in your who are social links, right? So with each type of social capital, you can develop different types of relationships, all of which will serve you well in retirement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for that distinction.
Yeah.
You talked about personal relevance, which is important. What does it mean? Relevant to the self? Again, what does this mean?
That's a really great question. And I will turn that back to you because I think that personal relevance is about what you feel you need to sort of move in your life, right? So what is it, what kind of relevance do you now get from your work? Or what kind of relevance did you get from your work? Generally, it's an acknowledgement, let's say, as a professor, that you are academically gifted, that you're articulate, that you're a writer, that you're a great teacher, that you have relationships with students. So that's the work relevance, right? You've maintained an identity that's been relevant to you. When you retire, you need to create a new identity that's relevant to you. So it could be that you take elements like Shayna did of her university identity with her to her next phase of life. Or it could be that you do something completely different, right? That you start becoming a gym rat and you develop muscles that you never knew you had, or you decide to become a, I don't know, to become a cross-country skier, and that becomes your new relevance, right? Skiing becomes something very important to you, or building muscles and eating lots of protein becomes very important to you and your new identity, and that is relevant to you at that time. So it really depends on, what you want for your life, right? How to bring your relevance into the next phase is defined by your interests now, rather than your former interests.
I'll just add on that, Stacey, because one of the trainings we had, and there's lots of questions here, so we'll get to them. And one of the pre-retiree, this person was a faculty person in a session, said, we had a panel of retired faculty on the stage, and they said to them, how do you deal with being irrelevant? And we had just gotten done having a wonderful panel of how engaged they were, how they had started all these new activities, how they were connected. Can you comment to that person's question about that fear of feeling irrelevant once you retire?
Yes, I mean, that's a gut punch, right?
Yeah.
That must have been very, very tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, transitions are hard. Transitions are very, very hard. And that feeling of can I maintain my sense of myself from point A, full-time work, to point B or C or D or E, whatever we decide. That's really the most sort of crucial piece. And it really depends on what we think, how we think of ourselves, right? If we think that retirement is a time when, we lose everything, then we're going to be pretty unhappy in retirement. But if we think as a time that retirement is a time where we can build a new identity that feels relevant to us in this phase of life, then we have a lot of exciting possibilities in store for us.
That's great, Stacey, because that builds onto this question here. Someone who says retirement seems like a ton of work and more hassle than staying employed. Not sure I'm seeing the upside. So why would somebody want to rebuild themselves or rebuild a new identity when maybe they're happy with the identity that they have right now?
Sure. I mean, retirement is an individual decision. I don't think that there's any set time for people to retire. I think that, it really depends on who you are, where you are. It might depend on your age. It might depend on your stage of life. It might depend on your health. It might depend on, how productive you are currently in your job. If you feel like you're still at the top of your game and you have a long way to go, why retire? But if you feel like you're sort of winding down or you'd like to wind down, then I'd say it's time to think about retirement. And I want to stress, though, that before you retire, it's time to think about planning, not the day you retire, not the week or the month or the year after you retire. Create a semblance of a plan before retirement, and then you'll have somewhere to go. Otherwise, thinking about retirement sounds treacherous, right? Thinking about retirement with nowhere to go sounds like you're sort of falling off a cliff. We don't want that to happen. And you can prevent that.
Yeah, through these personal planning. And then we have a lot to do as gerontologists on the other side to create a create more infrastructure for people to plug into other activities that are no longer full-time work when they've done that, been there, done that. There's
Absolutely.
Questions about caregiving, and I think also disability. So I think they're kind of somehow together. Like, what do we do? How do we develop when you're so much time is being spent trying to physically get in place, physically be well, or that you're caregiving and that you're taking time to do that, and you're not having much time to develop the retirement that you had dreamed of? It feels like a feeling of opportunity loss. So can you comment to how to negotiate that?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. We all have differing abilities, and someone with a physical disability, let's say, has probably up until the point of retirement learned how to move in the world in a way that works for them. And that physical disability might increase. It might get more complicated and difficult for that person to handle. And so I think that's really also where you call upon your social capital, right? Who are the people in your network who can help you, sit with you, plan with you, learn with you? Who can you teach how to care for you and how to help you get from wherever it is that you are now to wherever it is that you want to go? And again, creating that plan and having some idea of where you want to go, irregardless of your ability, is important, right? So the plan is always primary. And then, I mean, I have to say, planning can be completely unrealistic, right? I mean, I can plan to go skiing outside in New York now, but there's no snow. So that will have to be part of the plan in the future. So planning for everyone can have any number of ideas, some of which you can actually enact and some of which won't work.
That's
It
right.
did snow, by the way, today, so maybe I can snow. Maybe I
It's
can.
chilly,
ski.
huh? It's coming. You might be snowing down Madison Avenue. That is, it's such a good point, because what planning indicates, I think, is that you've thought about it versus getting to the sort of finish line or the retirement transition line and saying, oh, especially if you're living with someone already and you're not sure how their schedule, and also when you take away the hecticness of the 40, 50, 60 hour work week. And that's some of the questions are leading to here is, what if you're working so hard, you haven't had time to plan?
Welcome to the real world. I mean, it is hard to plan. It's hard to do a lot outside of a busy schedule, right? But what you need to think about in order to plan is, ask yourself, do I want to be stuck at the end of this road with nowhere else to go? So if the question is yes, or not knowing where to go, if the question is no, I don't want to be stuck, and yes, then the response is yes, I need to take time to create a plan. Everyone is busy. Everyone has a lot going on. And yet most people need to plan for the next phase of their life, whether it's, I don't know, going to graduate school, whether it's getting a job, the first job, your second job, your third job. If you don't plan, you don't have enough control, or you don't have as much control as you would like. And control in retirement is all about planning. And you know what? There are a lot of things that are out of control. As I said, you will end up taking bits and pieces of that plan and enacting them, but that is the vehicle. The plan is the vehicle. So take time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. I have a lot of busy people coming, faculty and administrators coming to the Envisioning Retirement workshops that we do here. And it's an hour, right? They get an hour of time to plan. And then they can come back and talk to me and plan even further. And little by little over time, they create a plan. And that's what I'd suggest. Slowly but surely, step by step, you can create a plan.
Any advice for how to make social connections if you're going to retire tomorrow and you haven't done any planning with that?
Sure. Yeah. Join. Are you a joiner? If you're a joiner, join a community center. Go to a senior center. Senior centers these days are actually really interesting. They're getting more and more interesting. That's part of the senior center, is part of sort of the community system of community supports that we need to develop even further, that you referred to, Carrie. But I would say join some sort of senior program. I have a bunch of people in my TARTS group, one in particular that I'm thinking about, who joined a group called the Transition Network, a network of mostly women who are retired, who are sort of in the same phase of life. And she's been going to this group and making friends, developing new connections. She's also active in the Society of Retired Faculty at NYU. She's also taking classes elsewhere. So, through involvement, you find people.
Do a little bit of a shift there about generation connection. If the assumption is that there's someone's done this reading that in pre-retirement generations, people that are younger have no incentives for maintaining social fabric and culture. I see it that some are, but some aren't. You can see both. So is there anything our generation can do about that? Yeah.
Can do to create intergenerational relationships, do you mean?
I think that's the, if they want to clarify, but is there anything our generation can do about pre-retirement generations having no incentives for maintaining social fabric and culture? Understandable given the climate crisis.
Yeah, I actually think that that's a myth, that
Yeah.
younger people don't want to be friends with older people. I think that you have to find the right younger people. I think there are a lot of younger people who need older people, who need new connections to older people. You might find that through a mentoring program, for example. You might find that through some sort of religious community. You might find that through one of the programs, through a class, let's say, taking a class at your university. I know at NYU, retired faculty can audit classes with students who are current college students or graduate students who are usually younger. So taking a class is a great way to find people and make connections to the next generation, to younger people. Also, I think that joining an adjacent organization, for example, you mentioned climate change. So joining a climate adjacent organization or a young person's climate organization, where there's sort of an older chapter, people of older age can sort of have their own chapter, and then getting together and having a dialogue about, what happened with our generation, what we hope for with the next generation. There are so many ways. And we know also that intergenerational relationships are so important to us all as we grow older. And the primary benefit to us is that intergenerational relationships help to reduce ageism, right? The more young people know how cool older people are, the less ageist, the more they dispel the negative stereotypes about age.
Yeah, it's my understanding it's about curiosity, connecting with people and laying down the assumptions that a younger person wouldn't want to hang out with you. I mean, that's the internalized ageism, really. Just continue to be curious, open to new ideas. And that's really the connection. I was going to name out, I was going to call out Third Act. It's Third Act, it's an organization that gets together, and they often are with multi-generations around fighting some of the tougher social issues that are out there.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Any advice, additional tips for getting over work addiction from a 4-year retired emeritus professor? I would also add the earlier comment you made, all people can audit most college classes over 60. Most towns have, whether you're faculty or not, have that. But how about work addiction? I think that comes in at all careers, can be going, getting to go to work every day. It sounds like it's maybe not a positive thing. Maybe they enjoy it, but maybe they get other feedback that it's not so good.
Right. Well, so, honestly, like work addiction is probably the best addiction to have. If you're going to have an addiction, it should be to something that you love. If you love your work, examine what you love about it. What feels addictive to you, right? And where can you find that same sort of sense of positivity and relevance outside of your work? Find something else that calls you. That gives you that same dopamine rush, right? That feels good to you. What else might feel good to you? And if it's your work, continue doing it. I mean, I would say if you want to experience another side of life, you might do it a little less. But if you're so happy about your work, if you feel productive about your work, if it's still good for other people in your life that you're getting up and going to work, then continue doing it. If it becomes a problem, I'd say, finding a few, or let's say one outside interest and spending a half a day at a time, a half a day per week, let's say. doing something different, and start from there and then build up and out.
Yeah, there's some good health indications that would, when you stretch your mind in different ways, when you stretch your
Yes.
your activities in different ways, it's good for it's positive towards self-growth. We
Mhm.
at the time, we have more questions in here, but I think we can download them and maybe get to them later. They're really great questions, but we only have limited time and we want to mind that for everybody. Stacey, Dr. Gordon, I really want to give you a lot of thanks for being here today. I appreciate you and us gerontologists really putting it out in the world. These, in some way, novel ideas. We really want people to encourage people that there's so much more growth and development and lifelong learning there ahead after love.
Yeah.
So thank you
Yes.
so much.
Well,
I'll hand.
thank you so much, Carrie, for giving me the opportunity, and thanks to AROHE.
Yes, thank you. And we'll give it to Roger, and also note that this video will be posted. Some people asked about slides, but I don't think you really used slides for this that were for sharing. But if there are, people would appreciate using it. You are going to send some resources though.
Yes, absolutely. We'll send the resources, including the questions that were posted on the slides.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, I'll give it over to you, Roger, to close things out.
Okay, thank you for a very interesting conversation. And Dr. Gordon, thank you for an enlightening and thought-provoking presentation. You've given us a lot to think about as we move on from today. And also thank you to Fidelity Retirement Services for their valuable support of this series, and to all of you for attending today's session. Please join us for session 3 on Tuesday, February 27th. Where we will hear from a panel of retired faculty and staff from across the US and Canada about their strategies for rebuilding their networks in retirement, for developing new social connections, and identifying resources to find purpose in this next chapter. We will be sending an evaluation along with a link to the recording of today's session, and I would encourage you to take a few minutes to complete the evaluation. Your feedback is very important to us. Those who attend any of the webinars in this series will receive a 30% off coupon on Michelle Silver's book, Retirement and Its Discontents, and will also be entered into a drawing for a free copy of the book. Winners will, for the drawing, will be announced at the end of the series after February 27th. So have a good day, and we hope that you will join us again on February 27th.